So, oftentimes, what happens in the fall is that one of the experiences that we can have is extreme dryness. And some people more than others. Some of us tend towards being more dry. And some years, people's bodies might be a little more balanced than others. But sometimes the dryness can even show up and turn into different kinds of like eczemas and things like that. And what I really think is important to know during this season, knowing that it's the lung season or the large intestine season, is that the skin is actually considered our third lung, and in Chinese medicine. And with the skin being the third lung, if there's dryness on the inside of the lungs, then it's going to show up here, and as well as in other mucous membranes throughout our body. And so, this also applies to the mucous membranes in our body, which are in our nasal passages, our lungs, our intestines, our mouth, the throat can feel really dry too from time to time. And I love to incorporate something demulcent into my fall regimen to help to nourish the mucous membranes and all of the cells. So what demulcent means is it's the name of a action that plants can offer to our bodies. And the way that we can tell that is by, I'm going to just pass this around, and there's not enough use for everybody. Take this into your mouth, put it in your mouth, and just chew on it a little bit, and wait until you feel a sort of texture. And that quality is very important to understand if you're interested in learning about plants. Because there's a handful of plants that grow here locally, and many plants across the world that have the quality of being demulcent. Many of us are familiar with a particular demulcent, or two different ones that we've probably used at some point in our lives. The first one being aloe, and the second one being flaxseed. And so it's that slipperiness that can really nourish the inside of our bodies, inside of our mucous membranes, and also show up in this way that they have several different actions that they can help us with. So it's not just the moistening and hydrating and like the plumping up of the cells, but it's also, it draws out waste. It helps to pull out these things in our bodies that we don't want.
And what's the name of this herb? Sorry.
This is mallow.
Mallow.
Yeah. So this is common mallow. Malva neglecta. That's her Latin name. There's several different kinds of mallows. You gonna consider your talent? Yeah. Mallow. We need a cup.
Wasn't those slipperiness now? Oh, sorry. Recording?
It's called mallow. Because it goes so deep and draws a lot of moisture. It's good point. I'm not really sure. Yeah, you can eat the leaf. I'm not sure about that. That's a great question.
What was your question?
Potentially.
If some of those bodies came from the deep rootedness of that plant, because it stems very long, deep.
Good question.
It's slippery. Yep. So the other quality, so we talked about two qualities so far, demulcents, being that first of all, they offer that slipperiness to our skin, our mucous membranes, to our cells. So they kind of plump them up. The second thing is that they draw out excess waste. And then the third thing that they do is they eliminate and cool inflammation. Okay? So, I can think of one thing that showed, or many things really, but that show up during this time of year in the autumn, is that when we get that, when the lungs get hot and they get dry, and you have a spasmodic cough. You wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and you start coughing and you can't stop. And so that's one place where drinking mallow all day long for several days in a row can really help that. Because sometimes when our lungs get into that pattern, it's kind of hard to break it. Those types of coughs last a lot longer. Because they're not being very productive. It's not easy to get out what we're trying to get out of the lungs. So then the next thing is that like sore throats can be really, really helped by demulcents like this. And has anybody in here ever drank throat coat? Right? Yeah, it's kind of that same offering. The throat coat is demulcent and it's soothing.
I'd say mullein almost in the...
Right, and mullein is amazing because it's that dry, hot raspiness that right at the onset of a cold, when you start to feel that scratchy hotness, mulleine's great.
So do you like the tea from the leaves themselves?
The leaves and or the root. So I generally do a lot of the leaves because I like the green in it, because then you're getting that nice hit of chlorophyll.
But not the stalk.
The stalk too, I like to use the whole thing. And that's somewhat of how my practice is that I like to use the whole thing. And I keep my plants really whole until they're ready to be put into the pot. So the stems, the flowers are great too. And
There's seed pods at all? Or?
there's seed pods. The seed pods are great too. Another name for this plant is cheese wheel. And I've been told, and I don't really know the history behind this, and I've never done it, but they used to use the little seed pods, the little cheese wheels for...
They spiral, don't they? Do they spiral?
No,
That's something else.
else.
Okay.
But for making cheese.
Oh.
Yeah.
Is there an enzyme in it or something?
Yeah, what is that? What is it? The arbor?
Rennet? It's like, it's come from like sheep's stomach. There's an enzyme from the sheep, and then you can also get it from a type of fungi.
Right. Something about that. I've never done it, like I said, but if you're a cheese maker, it might be really fun to look into that. And the other thing, one way that I choose what plant to bring to these classes is that really importantly it's safe, right? And there's not very many plants around here that we could name them on both hands which ones can be toxic to our bodies. But that's obviously a huge reason why the plants that I choose or what I choose to bring here is that there's no known contraindications with this plant. Children would love it. It's I think you can make so many things with mallow. It can be made into different foods, it can be added to your salads, you can make green smoothies with it, you can make green powders with it for the winter time when fresh greens aren't as available, although we do have a lot of convenience, but fresh wild greens. And it's great for teas, there's you can make pestos out of it. I mean, there's so much. Ask Katrina, she can list out many recipes.
Can you put it on externally as well since it's oily?
Yeah, so it's not oily, but it's called so the opposite, demulcent, is when you take it inside. That slippery, mucilaginous texture on the inside. And then the slippery, mucilaginous texture on the outside is called emollient. So it's properties, just how it's applied. And so you can make a poultice out of mallow, and it has that drawing action. So when we have a burn, mallow would be a great thing to put on top of it. You can add some water into a blender, just a little bit, add your mallow in there, blend it up, get this mashy, floppy green stuff, put it right on there, and your burn heals up really nicely. So, and you can think of so many ways as to how to incorporate this plant into your lives. It grows everywhere. And it's in your garden, and it's all over town. It's just, I love things that are so abundant and so ready to be used, and that we're not going to have a problem with it going extinct or over-harvesting. So these people call them weeds, but they're some of our best medicines because they are so abundant and grow so readily. And
this information might cause some moral dilemmas in the mind of the gardener. Just saying,
it's true.
Transform the appearance of my gardens, that's for sure.
Yeah, for sure. My gardens are very manicured.
Bindweed. Is that a good one for anything?
Bindweed. I mean, and I haven't not tried this yet. And from the research that I've done on bindweed is that it's considered an emetic. Emetic means it makes you purge. And that's a good medicine on its own, in its own way. Some cultures use emetics really consistently. And some of those people that I know that I work with, this indigenous tribe that comes from Ecuador, they use an emetic frequently. And they're like 90 years old, and I would have never guessed they were 90 years old. They will outwalk me any day. I can't even keep up with them in the jungle, it's amazing.
So back to this. Make it out of fresh leaves, the tea.
I make it out of fresh. And you can do it out of fresh, but it needs a little bit more because there's already water in the leaf. And so, it needs fresh, exactly. And right now, in the fall season, isn't exactly the time for a lot of green drinks. And do you guys know why? Can you guess? It's cooling. So some of us that maybe have a warmer thermometer on the inside, you can do more green drinks farther into the colder seasons. But for people that tend towards coldness and tend towards being really cold, you probably don't want to do green drinks right now unless it's one of our Indian summer days in the middle of the day, then you can do a green drink. But it's really, really nice to match our diets to what's happening outside. And I can't tell you the numerous times where I've had people that got really sick because they drank too many cold things and too many raw things for an extended period of time. And then it creates dampness, it creates all different kinds of things. Camp.
If I may, just that even hotter running people might not benefit from green drinks too. Like speaking out of experience, and this is more an Ayurvedic perspective as well. My fiery constitution in the digestive system is always active, right? And so I have high metabolism. And that gives me the idea that, I can eat anything. And actually drinking a cool green drink will accelerate that fire even more and aggravate it to a point of imbalance as well. And so it's counterintuitive, but that's kind of like the Ayurvedic window into it. So just to add
concept of like stark contrasts. And how, imagine if we moved right from the summer into the winter, and we didn't have anything in between, we didn't have a transition point. And so then what happens is we can't create harmony in our lives as easily. So it's a really great point. And good to know because, you know, we're all very, very unique. Each one of us has our own alchemy going on. And it's consistently changing, but getting to know what our tendencies towards imbalance are and getting to know what our tendencies when we're in balance and what that looks like, what they are. And so Brady's very aware that when he drinks a green drink, are you talking about in autumn or are you talking about?
Just in general.
In general. And, you know, and this is the one thing that we get stuck on a lot that I find really interesting is that we're told, you know, the raw food diet, in some ways, the raw food diet is the best diet because it's alive and the enzymes, and there's so much validity and beauty in that. Yet, if we keep doing that because someone else is telling us that it's good for us, and we don't soften the inner ear and listen inside to what we're feeling, then we can create more problems for ourselves. So I'd have people show up one time during this workshop, but it was in the fall, it was here in Durango, and it was cold outside. And we were in this room at Durango Natural Foods, and it was kind of cold in there, but it was cold outside, we had heaters going, and this couple had drank this really cold smoothie in the morning, and they were freezing, okay. And what they commented on, because we were talking about the thermal nature of foods, they were talking about how, you know, they just kept drinking that smoothie every morning, even though intuitively they knew it wasn't good for them, but they kept thinking it was good for them because that's what all the research says. So what I love about some of these really old 5,000-year-old systems of medicine, like Ayurveda and Chinese medicine, and some of the medicine I've learned from indigenous cultures from different places, is that they're very in tune with the natural world and what's happening. So whatever's happening out there is also affecting what's happening inside of us. And so what we're constantly trying to do is to balance those dynamic opposites. And so, you know, instead of drinking a green drink, what do you find works for you?
Well, hot tea.
Yeah. And then can it be something green so you can get the green essence? So, and that's, you know, teas are amazing because they offer us, for one, they offer us the yin side of the plant. And how many of you guys, does everybody feel like they have a grasp of the yin and the yang? It's okay if you don't. And
I think so. I don't remember telling you.
I would love to I love hearing it over and over and over again. I can never hear it enough because it just keeps settling in deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper every time that I hear it. And so the yin is the water, it's the feminine, it's the quiet, it's the inward and reflective, it's the winter. And it's the dark shadow. Oftentimes we don't like that side of things, right? It's the shadow. There's things there that are unpredictable and unknown. It's the mystery. The yin is the mystery. And then we have the yang. The yang is summer, the expansive, we have lots of energy to do lots of things. Active, it's direct, it's strong, it's masculine, and it's fire. Okay, so we need them both. It's so important. And in this culture, we tend to live in the yang solely. There's not much yin. And especially this time of year, it's the harvest time of year. Everybody's working so hard to make sure that all their crops are harvested, or all your medicines are harvested. And we're trying to go from having a lot of light outside and a lot of extra energy to do things, going into this place of whoa, I don't have as much energy. There's not as much light outside. I still have all these things to do, but I'm going to have to not do some of them. I am going to have to stay home and not go out with this friend this week. And making some other choices to allow our energy to condense down. Now, nature is really good at eliminating, right? Nature knows that as we condense all this energy, like all the trees, for example, all the blood is going back into the main branches and then to the trunk and then down and descending inward and downward towards the earth. And then it's no problem to eliminate the leaves. That's no longer serving, right? So that's what we're doing here. And then we're moving into that deeper inward space of being inside, into the yin. So one reason why I love these teas is because they represent the yin side of the plant. And because it's water, and we have to slow down to make a tea for ourselves. And lots of the medicine that I offer is generally in teas. There's some tinctures that I love. And yeah, this is a predominant way. Every morning I wake up and I tune in, soften the inner ear, deep listening, just feeling into what it is that my body is like that day. Am I feeling extra cold? Drink some ginger tea first thing. Am I feeling sluggish when I'm waking up? Well, my liver's off balance. I need to eat a little organ grapefruit. There's a lot of little subtleties that we can pay attention to. And we learn these subtleties in our yoga practice, especially every time we come back to the mat, every single time. I guarantee you, there's something that you can look for, something you can see that's very subtle, but it'll show up. And that's why we can practice the softening of the inner ear. That's so subtle. Could you guys feel it? Yeah. It's
the first time I've ever heard of
right. Totally. It's a really fun exercise because it doesn't feel like much. But for me, when I took this workshop, there was a blend of shamanism and yoga, and I just really liked that. And this teacher said that, and it just it opened a whole new world for me. Because it was okay, soften the inner ear. At first it's okay, you can't feel it. It's not extend your arm up towards the sky. It's so subtle. But what we're learning how to do is pay attention to subtleties. And the fall is what I noticed for myself is that everything is so much, you can feel everything so much more. You can feel your sadness more, your grief shows up, your different feelings in your bodies, it seems like we can palpate them a little bit more and see them a little more. I always find that interesting every year. But anyways, the fall and the different ways that things show up. Another thing that shows up a lot of time this time of year is anxiety and stuff in the nervous system. So in the fall, especially certain people should kind of try and stay out of the wind because it's a windy time and it's going to get much windier, as we know, and much colder, and that can be really aggravating for the nervous system. So this time of year, some of the things that we can do, if you're feeling ungrounded, do some of those grounding postures like we did, the squats, everybody's favorite, or the forward fold, like any kind of delicate. And I can get thrown off really easy by one windy day, and then I can get so thrown off that it just brings up, an equal day that I have to replenish myself again. So whereas somebody else can go out in the wind and just love it, it hasn't been that way for me. But every year, I remember it started when I was about 12 years old. I would get really depressed beginning on the fall equinox, and then all the way until the solstice. And then it was the next day. And I didn't even start to see this pattern until I got older. But the next day after the solstice, I started to feel a little bit of lightness inside my heart. And when I can understand what's happening outside and match my body to it, or match and pair the dynamic opposite to what's happening outside, then the harmony for me is so much better. I don't get depressed anymore. I might feel a lot of emotion, and that's okay, but I don't sink and wallow in it anymore. And maybe I will again. It's life. But the season of the lungs, inside of our lungs, the emotion that we hold there is grief. And so if there's unresolved grief in the lungs, then it might show up now more so than it would show up in the middle of the summer. And so, if there's a feeling of more emotion in this time of year, go for it. Move towards it. And the one thing I've learned about emotions is the only way to is screw it. Because it won't resolve without that.
Yeah, I know some plants are more energetic in spring to gather. Is this one that it would be better to gather spring than fall?
Fall is fine. And I walked out into my yard today and I looked at the mallow and I was like, oh my gosh, I need to do another harvest because it's so vibrant right now with all the rain. And the weather's been warmer too. So I totally get it right now.
The mountain soup is, it's basically evergreen. Even in the middle of the winter, you can dig in the snow and it'll be green right there.
And it's one of the first to come up.
Do you dry it or the process of after harvest?
Yes, great questions. I do use more of the greens, but this is root and leaf. But I really like the roots as well, especially if I'm in my garden and I need to pull some of the melons out. That's what these roots are. But what I like to do is to harvest them. If you do just the aerial parts, just the leaves, or if you do the roots and leaves. And then I lay out a nice big flat sheet or screen. And then I just lay them out so they all have a lot of space. And then the key to drying things really well for this, for most plants, except for tobacco, is to let them dry as quickly as possible. Because if you're getting the heating in the day and then the cold at night and then a little bit of moisture mixed in there, then you're going to get, heat, moisture, and maybe a little cold compost. So basically, with the heat and moisture, you get compost. And so if you dry your plants really quickly and thoroughly and well, with some airflow moving through there, then you're going to have great medicine. So the thing is that your medicine should look pretty close to what it looks like when you harvested it. The mallow definitely loses some of the green color, but it doesn't lose its medicine. But if you powdered it up, it would still be very green. And because if it's brown, that's what you don't want. And when you go to the store and you look in the bulk herb section, or you go to Vitamin Cottage and they have them packaged in the little plastic packages, It's, a lot of them are brown, and it's just, I mean, it's a great thing that we have stores and we have convenience. It's just that we don't know how old the herbs are. And if the way to tell is by using our senses, by connecting to the smell of the herbs, making sure they smell like oregano, or they smell like vibrant pepper, or whatever it is that you're buying. And then that their color is good, that it's vibrant and vital. That's what we want. So I like to leave my plants totally whole, and I'll just put them into either a cloth pillowcase, is what I like to use a pillowcase a lot, or into paper bags. I do not like plastic. Because a lot of times there might still be, some plants might still have a little bit of moisture in them, and they'll just rot, compost. So with the dried plants, drying them whole, keeping them in paper or cloth, and that's basically it. And then, if I give plants to somebody else, I usually give them to them as whole roots, and then they can break them down as they go.
How long does it take for a whole, like what you have here, to dry completely this time of year, let's say, obviously in the summer?
Right, and now there's a little moisture in the air, so I'd say 3 days. And
Do you bring it in at night?
if it's outside, then bring it in at night for sure, because there's a lot of moisture going on outside at night. But right now, I'm mostly drying everything inside. My house is just a rack of plants right now. And in the summer, though, sometimes what I'll do is if it's like raining and it's monsoon weather, and I notice that my plants aren't drying well, I'll take the plants outside and I'll put them into dappled sunlight, or maybe even if it's really, really moist outside, into full sunlight. I don't use sunlight a lot, but only if the moisture in the air is so thick that the plants are going to compost anyway, not dry well.
What do you think about using automobiles? And I mean, I've dried some stuff on my dashboard before, but I didn't notice that you have to really kind of watch it because it's a magnifying glass.
Right,
basically.
yeah. And I'd say be careful in the car because it is a magnifying glass and it'll be so direct. Right, so what I like to do if I'm on a collecting trip and I go down to Arizona or something like that, I'll keep everything in open paper bags inside my car and just go in and kind of rotate things so there's enough airflow. And then if I get to a stopping point where I'm in one spot for a couple of days, I'll pull everything out, kind of lay it out flat and give it some air. It's fun, I love those collecting.
Do you ever bundle them and hang them?
Yes, you can definitely do that. And when you bundle them, just make sure that they're like not any bigger than a quarter. And then you can bundle them and just hang them. And a rubber band works, or you can use chain string.
What about the drying powder? How do you use that?
So dried powder, mallow is one of my favorite dried powders. It just works so well, and it's so abundant, easy to dry. So just take the leaves, and not necessarily much of the stem. You can do some stem, but it doesn't powder as well. And then if you have something like a Vitamix, that's great. If not, it's the coffee grinder. A blender, I haven't found a blender so far that powders things really to a fine powder like I like it. But the coffee grinder works great.
What about Cuisinart?
Oh, does that work?
I don't know. It's kind of like a coffee grinder.
Yeah, try it out. I don't have one. I've been
Destroying the coffee grinder for so long.
I know, I'm told so. It's and the noise is just like when you do it over and over again. So then from there you just powder it up, and then I like to keep my powders separate. And then sometimes I'll mix like really like to honor the uniqueness of each day, or each week. And just when you powder it up, keep it inside of a jar, inside of a cloth bag, works really nice. But you need to use it at least within 6 months.
You feel like sprinkling on salad. How do you
Right. So the way I like to take my green powders is, and you can be creative in whatever way works for you. But I like to put mine in a little bit of warm water in the morning. Sometimes I'll squeeze a little lemon in there, and then mix it up and let it sit there for 10 minutes, and then I drink it. My son, the way he eats his is like on an egg. It works.
Like that.
Whatever, however you can do it with the kiddos. And for us too, our medicine and it needs to taste good. And it's important. Because otherwise we're not going to take it. Or there might be like an intuitive, subtle understanding, like my body doesn't like this. So that's one reason why I like to keep things a little more separate. Until I get a little more versed in what I feel like I know and want. And then you can sprinkle it in applesauce, you can, if it's summertime, put it in tea. And I just like to do it in a way that I know it's in a concentrated space, so I know I'm actually getting it. Because you could sprinkle it on the salads, but then or something, I mean, you're doing a lot of greens all at once, but.
Put it on the ice with butter. Still sucks.
Yeah. It's really good.
Yeah.
Speaking of butter is one of those things right now that's moistening for the dryness inside of our bodies that can occur. So butter is a great thing to be eating right now. Or ghee.
Coconut oil.
What's that?
Coconut oil.
Coconut oil is great and it's cooling. So it's right now maybe sesame oil. In the summertime, coconut oil. That's how I like to do it. And butter is and ghee. I'm going to say it again. Because we want to keep our tissues moist and supple, and so let's see here.
And I know you're going to do a winter class, but that won't be true all the winter.
Yes, exactly. Mm-hmm. And we haven't gotten over the next couple of classes we get more into the lungs and like how the autumn shows up in the lungs, how the autumn shows up in the large intestine too. So there's a lot more that we get to talk about. I want to save some of it for the next classes. But I want to tell you this amazing dream that I had once. And it was a couple of years ago, and I was about to embark on this awesome trip down to Arizona to the Eden Hot Springs, a place that I frequent often. And the night before, I was like, had this weird fear coming up about rattlesnakes, and I love them. I've been around them a lot and living down in the desert in the past, and I really, really like them. I like their energy. I like what they stand for. I like what they are. I like that they like to warn us. I just think they're cool. And but I was like feeling really fearful about them and like worried about getting bit and all these different things. And over the course of the years, I've had many dreams about rattlesnakes. It's kind of like a recurring dream, but different scenarios each time. But every time what I'm trying to do is to hold the rattlesnake. I just really want to hold the rattlesnake. And so in this particular dream, I picked up the rattlesnake and I brought it up to my face and I was looking at it straight in the eyes, and it was coiled up. And felt my fear, and I allowed my fear to not be shown. In my mind, I was like, I can't cannot show or let the snake feel that I feel fear. And so I like literally saw the energy of fear going from my feet into the earth, and I just kept moving it down, kept moving it down. So for the first time in my dreams, I held the rattlesnake. But every other time in my dreams, I got bit. And sometimes it would be like a half a fang that got sunk into me, just enough dose to get the medicine from the rattler that I needed. You know, each time it was something different. And then, in this particular dream, that happened. And then I woke up. It was the first day of fall. It was equinox. I woke up and I was so sick. I got up and I just went outside and started throwing up. This is kind of a graphic tale, but there's a purpose for it. So I went outside and I'm throwing up and the bears are walking by. Because I live on Bear Highway. And, you know, the deer come walking through the yard and I'm just so sick. And I threw up for a day or two, I can't remember. It was just a constant letting go. And then I realized, like, oh wow, here we are in the season of the large intestine. And I needed to eliminate everything that wasn't serving me. And so in that way, you know, medics can be a good, something that's useful because it helps us to eliminate waste. But I thought it was such an interesting dream. On the first day of the equinox, I couldn't move for 4 days afterwards. I hadn't been that sick in a long time. And the dream with the snake, and the whole way of the snake is to shed its skin and to release its old way of being. And so it was so perfect for the fall. And I started to understand the fall a lot better at that point in time. And to accept that. Because sometimes it's not easy to transform into a new way of being. That's what we get to do every fall. And then we get to plant these seeds for the spring that get to grow into something beautiful. So now, like, just consistently working with harvesting the sweetness out of our experiences currently or that happened over the summer. And if we keep in touch with these seasons all year round, every single year, then we don't have this buildup over our whole life that we have to go through some things like that, or really deep illnesses that can show up when we're not able to pay attention as much as we do. And sometimes they do anyway, but you get to be a little more mindful. I don't know what time it is, but do you guys have questions currently?
I have a question, and like if I were to go out in the woods and start picking some herbs right now, I know certain herbs, but what would you say is at its peak, or what would be good to, other than mallow or those other herbs?
Yeah, so it depends on your elevation. And right now, it's a great time for cherry bark.
Cherry bark, okay.
The wild cherry bark. And there's still some hawthorn berries on the trees. There's also, mallow and dandelion and burdock and Oregon grapefruit.
Been seeing some horsetail.
Yeah, the horsetail right now is so good.
Yeah.
Really good. The thing about horsetail that's really important to know is that you harvest it from a very clean source. Don't harvest it downstream from agriculture.
Right.
Because it tends to pick up nutrients. It picks up a lot of the waste. It's one of those really old plants that has survived so long for a reason that rose hips would be great right now. What else? There's so much. Up in the higher country, there's still some harvesting to be done up there, but it's also things are
Dying.
Yeah, they're really on their way. Everywhere you go, even in the winter, wintertime I find myself harvesting here and there, just little bits. Even if it's like, just because I want that energy in my life, and maybe I'll go dig up a little organ, or not dig up a little organ, up until the ground freezes, right? And sometimes it depends on the year. It can be longer, and there's just a short window where the ground's frozen. But one thing that I like to harvest is the pine needles in the winter.
Like on the pinyon pines or
Yeah, any of them,
any of them.
or spruce even, or fir, but they all have a lot of vitamin C.
And Lusnia too, is the same branch.
Yeah.
Do you get the whole thing? Like, I've heard some people say just the tips, but
Of the pine
pine
needles?
needles, yeah.
Well, there you can do any of it, and
Okay.
even the dried needles on the ground. I love those. That's almost, I almost prefer. No. I mean, the ones that are really brown and decomposing, not those. But right now, the pine trees, they're sloughing off some of the needles, the pine straw. That's great. Those ones are there. And, nature's dried them for you.